Hey everyone, this is Mike, and I like trusts. I know this isn't the case for a lot of people, but I think they're a pretty good addition to the game for a few different reasons. Shadowbringers to me has been the best the game has ever been in terms of story, and the trust system adds another layer of immersion into this story by allowing you to go into the dungeons with the NPCs that you're interacting with quite a lot whilst you're going through the MSQ. The trusts also aren't just blank NPCs that are just there to replace your teammates. Each has their own identity in terms of things that they say during the dungeon run, but also in terms of actions that they perform. Donmeg, the level 73 dungeon in Ilmeg, is a very good example for this. During the final boss encounter, the floor will disappear at some point, and you have a very small section left for you to walk on. Some characters will be really careful and take their time crossing this section, whereas others just can't be asked wasting their time and they just sprint right across. I also don't remember exactly who it is, I think it's Urianger, but one of them just channels a teleport and just teleports right over the gap instead. So even when you do the dungeon once, it might be worth doing it a second time with a different team if you're curious about the interactions that the different NPCs have inside that dungeon. But it doesn't just stop there. Tancred, for example, gets access to his cartridge skills of Gunbreaker when he's in the same party as Reen, because Tancred can't make the cartridges himself, but Reen can. And Alize, for example, is always very fast to use the limit break on bosses, and I'm pretty sure that there are other quirks that I've missed as well, but they all just add a little bit of extra to the experience. Now, let's say that you don't really care about the lore and story immersion, then what are some other reasons that you might want to use this system for? Well, first of all, they don't judge. If you're new as a healer or as a tank and you're not comfortable with doing big pulls or doing dungeons in general, then you can just do a few runs with your trust instead to get used to the dungeon or to get used to playing your role, because there will always be people that bought a level boost or that leveled entirely doing Palace of the Dead or Heaven on High, so running normal content can be a little bit new, so using your trusts can be something that helps you build confidence. They will also normally do all of the mechanics correctly, so you can also learn the dungeon mechanics by just paying attention to what your trusts are doing. Another reason could be for the achievement. If you get them all to level 80, then you get a title called Trusted Friend, and this was my main reason for leveling them. Leveling alts is another one. I know that running with a normal party is usually going to be faster, and I say usually because your average party will be slightly faster, but you can always get unlucky and get a bad party for which the trust will actually be faster if you do get a bad group. For those that are interested in how fast they actually are, I did a few runs of our latest dungeon earlier today to see what the difference was between playing different roles, etc. And these are the clear times that I was able to get, and they're definitely not that much slower than your average duty finder group. So when you take into consideration that you will more often than not also spend some time in the queue before you get into the dungeon, then depending on what role that you are leveling, you could just be way faster leveling with your trust instead of using the duty finder. I know that you can do other things whilst you're inside of the queue, but still, some dungeons can take a very long time to pop, and then when they do pop, you still need to get lucky to have a good party when you do get in there. For me personally, I started to use my trusts more for leveling once I got to Mount Gulk, the level 79 dungeon, because that one would always take ages before I would be able to find a group for that, and for some reason it also felt like most of the groups that I ran with struggled with that dungeon as well, so taking my trust was actually a whole lot more laid back for me than using the duty finder, and would more often than not also be faster as well, because I wouldn't have to wait half an hour in queue, meaning that half an hour in queue, half an hour in the dungeon, that's pretty much 2 runs at that point with your trust instead of just the 1 run in duty finder. And then last but not least, the reason why I was using them earlier today is for gear, or just loot in general, because your trusts don't need any loot, so all of the drops will go to you automatically. Yes, there will be fewer gear drops than if you were to run with a party, but because you get everything that does drop, that kind of makes up for it. Also, the minions and the Orchestrions can drop while you're running with your trust, so you won't have to fight over those with your other party members if you are after those specifically. When it comes down to leveling them, what would be the best way to go about it? Well, you will want to create 2 groups, one group where you play DPS, the other where you play tank. In your DPS group, all you have to make sure of is that you pair Tancred and Reen together, and that's pretty much everything that you need to pay attention to. Ever since trusts got their experience gain buffed, they will also level alongside you, so you can just level 2 alt jobs while leveling your trusts, given that you don't already have everything at max level, of course, but back in the day you needed to level 4 jobs to make this happen. Once your trusts all reach level 80, you also unlock the scenario mode, which allows you to run with other NPCs as well that you met during the story. For example, Lena isn't a part of the trusts that you can level, but once you do unlock the scenario mode, you can use Lena to run a Holminster switch again, because she was one of the NPCs that was available during the MSQ for that dungeon. And then also at level 80 you will unlock different glamours for the different trusts, but that is just purely cosmetic. So as you can see, there are a fair amount of reasons as to why you might want to use the trusts system. They have their ups and downs, but I do think they're at least worth trying out. And I'm curious to see what the additions to the system are going to be going into the next expansion, because they already mentioned that the system would get some upgrades. So let me know what you think of the trusts. Have you used them before? Do you use them whenever a new dungeon comes out? Or have you never used them before? And if you didn't, has this video made you curious as to try them out after all? Let me know down below. But that does it for me, so I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.